Hi everyone and welcome to my channel. I'm Simon at Savage Reads and you're joining me with a new co-host on Crime Time because Pip's so busy. Jane Harper flew all the way from Australia to come and talk to me. Thank you for coming all this way, Jane.
Thank you for inviting me.
A pleasure. So we're going to be talking about all things to do with the dry, force of nature and the Lost Man without spoilers. And Australian noir and Australia, which I believe is my spirit animal, even though I've never been. I was telling Jane that before. I was like, I really love Australia, having never been there. So I actually want to start off with Australia. What is it? Because all of your books are very much based in the Australian landscape, and the landscape to me is as much a character as any of the characters in the book. How has Australia impacted you in terms of inspiration and?
Yeah, I think that the landscape's been really inspiring for me, and when I set out to write a book, the first book, I really wanted to set it in Australia because I felt like the dry Australian.
Product placement.
Because I just feel like the Australian landscape is an absolute gift for writers.
Yeah.
It's so diverse, and there's really like a lot of options, and it also has that kind of real mix of sort of the beauty and the brutality, where it's quite easy for things to go wrong quite quickly. So I think with the setting, what I always try and do is I try and really weave it through the novel, so it's not just a backdrop. It's actually kind of driving the characters and their behaviour and who they've become as adults, and how they sort of respond to situations. So my aim is to, during the book, the readers kind of really get a sense of the landscape of the setting, but by the end, sort of really feel like that book could not have been set anywhere else. You couldn't pick up that plot and set it somewhere else. It has to be in that place.
Yeah, and it's amazing because heat is a common theme, particularly actually if we go to your latest novel, which is The Lost Man, which is a standalone. No one talked about standalones later, but with The Lost Man, I don't think that could happen. The opening sequence could happen anywhere else other than where it is. And I wondered if you could just kind of set that a little bit, because it's all based around a possible tombstone in the middle of nowhere, grave in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, sure. So this was, I'd say The Lost Man was a really fun one to write. I really enjoyed it. That's that one. So The Lost Man is set in outback Queensland. So we're talking sort of pure outback. The sort of term outback gets sort of thrown around a lot, but
yes,
it is quite a specific
place. It needs to be used for anything that's not a city.
Yeah, it does, absolutely. Whereas the outback is quite a distinct, sort of region, and this is sort of pure outback. So we're talking about this family who works on these cattle stations where the nearest town is 3 hours away, and your next door neighbour is hours and hours away, and there's one policeman and one local officer, and 60 people spread over hundreds and hundreds of square miles. So.
Well, the kids have to talk online, don't they? Because there's no schools nearby. It's so remote. I couldn't believe it when I was reading it.
That's it. And they have, you go into their kitchens, and it's like you open a store cupboard, and whereas I would have a fridge, they have what looks like a 7-Eleven type corner store.
Don't get me started on 7-Elevens, because I could live in a 7-Eleven. That's all I'm going to say.
You'd be right at home.
Well, I might not be because it's so far away.
So it's this incredibly different lifestyle from anything that really most of us have ever experienced. And the book opens with around this Stockman's grave, which is a fictional grave, but it's based on a real kind of thing you can see out in the outback, which is these lonely graves where someone has died, usually unexpectedly or in sort of quite tragic circumstances, and if they're lucky, someone will come along later and put up a marker. So you get this really eerie kind of sort of really elaborate graves, which would not look out of place in a really lovely sort of cemetery, just in the desert,
in the middle of nowhere.
Alone. And I thought that was such a striking image, and it's one of the very few sort of man-made kind of landmarks in sort of the region we're talking about. So the family is kind of drawn to it for various reasons, but it opens up with one of 3 brothers who has been found dead at this particular landmark.
And also, because when you open it, it's awful because we get his last moments, really, as he is trying to follow the shadow in order to just get and you get that. I'm feeling dry mouth thinking about it. That's not just because I'm filming, although I do get dry mouth filming, but it's this unbearable heat. But what's also quite concerning, and how the kind of the rest of the mystery goes, is that he's left his car and walked miles, his car being full of water and food. And so what on earth has happened? And that is the teaser, because it is. And what I found because I've read all three, and what I found particularly interesting with this one is, one, it's the tensions between these brothers, and also you have a brilliant way through all of your fiction where something will come out of like the side from nowhere that really twists everything around, but yet you don't feel cheated, you just feel like, oh my god, you're like excited for the next bit. How hard is it to do that, to keep the reader from kind of going, hang on a minute, where did that come from? Like, and yet it feels totally natural, and I want to say something, but I can't because I can't give everything away, but I've noticed that with all of the books, that these sort of twists will come in, but they feel completely natural.
Yeah, well, thank you. I'm so glad you said that, because that is exactly what...
It's not like you sort of go, clanger, there's something that's come out of nowhere that the reader can't guess.
Yeah.
That can be quite tricky.
Because I think you're absolutely right, because I think there's a really fine line between a trick and a surprise, and I think you absolutely want to be on the surprise line, side of that line. And the way I kind of I approach things is actually when I'm thinking of like the plots and developing the book, I actually tend to start from the end. So,
really?
So that's kind of more the, when I'm thinking about what, an idea for a book, it will often become the end sort of sequence that is actually what kind of draws me to the story.
Wow.
And then it's a question of going back and thinking, okay, where am I going to bring the reader in to lead us to this point? So I always know where it's going, and my ideal as well is that by the end, throughout the book, you're kind of being distracted, and your kind of head's being turned, and there's lots of kind of possibilities.
Red herring, I love a red herring.
But then I would like the reader at the end to be able to look back and think, and everything sort of slots into place, and you can see the signposts in hindsight that at the time maybe you just didn't, you misinterpreted or didn't notice. But I like it, when you look back and you think, oh, okay, and it all kind of clicks.
Well, what I think is nice is that everyone that I've read, I have never guessed the ending, but I've never gone, oh, I feel cheated that I didn't get the end. I'm like, oh no, hang on, if I'd spotted this and this and thought about it a bit more, I would have got the ending, which I think is a really generous thing to do, because there are some thrillers that you read and it's like the ending comes, you're like, well, that character's never been in that for the whole rest of the book, what's going on? And I love that you do that. One thing that kind of is a theme as well between all of the books is obviously secrets. What is it you love about secrets? Well, what do we all love about secrets?
No, well, exactly. I mean, we all love them, don't we? And I think there's a few things. Like one is that one is purely, I guess, a technical point of view, because when you're writing a book with a bit of mystery and suspense element, obviously it helps if you have people who have things that they're concealing from other characters for various reasons. Well, I mean, that's not always a bad thing. I mean, people will have things they don't talk about publicly, or things they're sort of kept to themselves. And that's a good way to kind of unravel things for the reader. And the second is, I think, just trying to tap into that kind of authenticity where, in real life people do have other lives, and they have things that maybe they're ashamed of them, maybe they're not, but none of us really share our whole selves with everybody in our life. And I think that's quite a natural reflection of society, and it's about kind of using that in the best possible way, I think.
Yeah, and you mentioned that you go to almost the end, which I find really interesting, because when you're reading them, I feel like at the beginning you've almost set yourself a mission of what is the almost impossible scenario, and how do I work backwards from that?
Well, that's why I have to start at the end, though, because if you start at the start, if you think of a great kind of opening for the start...
Well, because with The Lost Man, you've got like a man in the middle of nowhere, there seems to be nobody else around him, and he's just sort of died and chosen to die by walking to this particular point, and I was like, well, how did that idea come into your head, and how do you know where you're going with that?
Yeah, and I mean, how I think it scares me to think you could paint yourself into a corner if you start with a really great idea, but you don't know how to resolve it. Because if it's kind of confused, if it's kind of something that intrigues the reader because it seems so improbable.
Yeah.
I mean, how are you going to come up with that ending? So, whereas I find if you come up with the ending first, then you can really play around at the start, because then you can drop the reader in wherever you want in the most kind of intriguing place possible.
Yeah.
And then at least you've got the confidence to know that it will work, you can work it out.
And when you were writing The Dry, did you know that would be a potential series?
No, I didn't. I mean, I have to say, when I was writing The Dry, I didn't even know that anybody other than me would ever even read it.
And look what happened there.
So, it's funny, because I did honestly make some decisions about, quite minor things, but the odd like name here or there. And I remember thinking, well, it doesn't really matter, because nobody's ever going to read this book. So I'll just use that and move on, really. And I mean, I kind of, because I'd wanted to write a book for a really long time. I was a really big reader as a kid, and I'd always kind of had this ambition to write a book. I can't even tell you when it started. It was just kind of always there. Never did anything about it. I was working full time as a print journalist, and finally, kind of the years were kind of ticking on, and I kept on waiting for this sort of big block of time to open up and this great idea to strike. It obviously never did, and it got to the point where I thought, like, I'm gonna do a few things. I'm gonna try and sit down. I'm gonna make the time around my full-time job. I'm gonna write the kind of book that I think I would personally like to read, and I'm not going to worry about whether it will appeal too much to anybody else, and I'm not going to put any pressure on myself that anything will happen with it. I'm just going to try and finish it as a kind of almost like a technical writing exercise, and just try and enjoy it and learn from it. And so I just sort of, I want to try something set in Australia, something with a bit of a mystery and element, and so I wrote The Dry, and I just tried to sort of enjoy the process, I guess.
And then look what happened from there. So that basically the message there is, everyone, if you want to write a book, just get on and write the book. Who knows what can happen? But bearing that in mind, if you hadn't planned for Fork to come back necessarily, how did you go about with, I'm going to hold it up, with Force of Nature? Where did that, was that a standalone initially, or did you think actually, no, this is the next mystery for him?
Yeah, so when I got the publishing deal for The Dry, like really, like very early on with the publishers, you have a conversation about what's next, you know, and I had a few discussions with them, and I didn't have any other ideas. Like I didn't have kind of, when I started to write The Dry, it wasn't like I had like hundreds of options to choose from, or kind of manuscripts sitting in a drawer. I mean, it was literally my first kind of go, really, and I hadn't really thought beyond that. I had discussions, and and it just sort of came about in terms of like I sort of wanted to set something in still in Australia, but in a different setting. So, the Force of Nature said sort of quite in a dense bushland and in winter, because I think the thing that was most important to me was I didn't just want to do the Dry sequel. Yeah, exactly.
The Dryer.
I wanted to really kind of do so.
Take it in a different direction.
Yeah, exactly. But I think, you know, it was in The Dry, you know, Aaron Falk is the main character. He's very much in this kind of past, you know, like it's his hometown, and you're visiting sort of all these sort of people that he hasn't seen for a lot of years. And I think with Force of Nature is a chance to kind of bring him more into like his presence, really.
Because really The Dry is kind of, it's about secrets his past, and also the turmoil of going back home and trying to work out what has gone on amongst people that he used to know, but also ways to distance himself. So you get all of that. But what I loved about him coming back was he's still very much there, but it's a very different story, and it felt really, you know, you were intrigued in all sorts of different ways. Also, what I found interesting with Force of Nature was it plays with that fear that I think is in all of us, and I wonder how much fear plays into all of your writing, of being lost and alone in the middle of nowhere, particularly the bush.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree. I mean, I could still be inside the car park, and I'll be worried about losing the trail, you know, because it's in Australia, like the bushland is really, it's again, it's quite hard to imagine when you're sort of in a beautiful library in an urban environment, but the density of it, and the absolute kind of the way, you know, you think you know where you are, and you can be somewhere completely different. I mean, you know, you hear stories about all the time about hikers who get lost, like quite experienced ones as well, and or people, sometimes they have, like in Australia, have these sort of music festivals in kind of bushland area, like very organised, but people try and walk in because they don't really have the barriers, and people try and walk in, and every year they're having to kind of rescue these teenagers who have kind of tried to follow the sound. And
I got lost in the centre parks woodwinds, so I'd be dreadful in the bush, frankly. But the other fear that you've got as well at the heart of it, and this is just a personal fear of mine, is the team away day.
Oh God, I know.
Those bonding, except it's not an away day. This is two groups, we should say, in case you've not read it, which I'm sure you have, but we have two groups from the same company. We have a group of women and a group of men. They go off and they have to basically go through a trail, and one of the women doesn't come back, basically, and you have to find out why. But that whole scenario I loved, because it's just so cringy, and also you must have had so much fun with the tensions on top of just the tensions of that.
I really did. I really enjoyed the kind of that sort of feeling of, so you've got 5 corporate women who, you know, within their kind of office structure, their hierarchy is like defined. You know what I mean? You've got, you know, who's got the glass corner office, and you know who's, you know, doing the vacuuming, you know, and it's very very sort of clear. And then when you're out suddenly in the bushland, and things have all gone a bit wrong, and suddenly it's no longer about that. It's about who can read maps and who's the fittest and who's keeping their head together. But the sort of the corporate team building thing, when I was kind of writing the book and I mentioned to people kind of loosely what it was about, and people were like, the number who would clutch my arm, like, oh my God, I have to tell you about, and he can't wait stories about having to, tile a bathroom with Jerry from accounts, and then the next day someone would come and rip it down and someone else would have to do it, and all kinds of things.
Those things just, they're to me slightly more scary than just being in the bush.
It honestly hit an absolute nerve. Like people were full of like all these stories. So I have to say, having worked in print media, there was never enough budget for us to actually do anything like that. So that's the key to avoiding them.
No, that's true. Yeah, working in the public sector or something like that, where they don't have the budgets for it, I just don't like them. It's that thing that, when you go to a meeting, people go, so first of all, we're going to introduce ourselves, and also everyone's got to hold hands and say something, and you're like, oh no, it's even in meetings, I don't like it. Anyway, sorry, moving on. But it was something that just, and that's what I think I love as well about all of your books, is that they have this, they're relatable. So even though, for me, they're sat on the opposite side of the world, they're in very extreme conditions, I relate to them and I relate to the characters. Is that something that was really important to you, the relatable nature of them?
I'm really glad. I'm really glad that you feel like that, because that's kind of a really important thing. I think as I was saying earlier, it's really important that I feel like the setting is authentic and believable and is a real part of it. But at the same time, I think in terms of the characters and the relationships, I think it's important that that's more universal. And you want that to be something that is something that people can kind of recognise in their own lives or the people they know. And I find that's actually not that hard to achieve when you think about what drives people, because we all experience the same kind of emotions, and we all know what it's like to feel stressed or alone or under pressure. And I think if you can really tap into those kind of human qualities, that's it's the kind of thing that people can often really attach themselves to.
Yeah, no, definitely. Now, The Lost Man is a standalone. How did you know when you started that it was going to be a standalone? Do you have an idea of going forward, do you kind of know now that you're going to be like, oh, that might be a standalone, that might be a fourth book?
So I knew really early with this one, with The Lost Man, and I think the main thing is because I think for any book you want the best characters to tell the story the best way possible. Yeah. And because I knew with, Falk is a city-based detective, he's based in Melbourne, he's sort of quite desk-bound, and this book, The Lost Man, was set in such a far-flung part of Australia that, I knew straight away that it wasn't going to be, there's no natural, authentic way to get him up there in any kind of believable scenario. So I knew there'd be better people to tell the story, and having this sort of immediate family, which is very kind of realistic portrayal of the kind of makeups of household, I thought that was really important.
Well, I love the fact it feels like a domestic family drama, but at its most extreme, it's still got that family saga element at its heart.
Yeah, that's right, and I think I really enjoyed that. The characters, particularly Nathan, he's the main character, the oldest brother. The whole book is told sort of, right from his point of view, and he's such a kind of he's so isolated, both physically but also emotionally. Partly through geography and things.
Circumstance is definitely one with him, and an unfortunate circumstance. You feel very much for him a lot of the time, which is quite And again, it's that relatable element. It's understanding what someone's gone through. Now I have to mention Eric Bana is going to be playing Falk in the adaptation. We'll come to that shortly, but have you got anyone in mind for Nathan if that becomes adapted?
Oh, I don't know. Who do you think?
I don't know. It's a very tricky one, because I kind of felt like, I don't know how good Colin Farrell's Australian accent would be, but he's kind of, in my head, he's quite gruff but lovable. Yeah,
and I think with Nathan, one thing I've sort of done a bit more throughout the book is I've realised that physical descriptions actually are not that helpful to the reader.
No, because I place somebody on them automatically.
That's right, and I find people do, they absolutely kind of, you can describe hair colour, eye colour, whatever, all you like, but people will have their own image. So what I tend to do more, certainly with The Lost Man, is, and ideally readers won't even notice this, but I tend to focus more on the kind of personality, emotional traits, and leave the physicalities alone beyond what's necessary. So with Nathan, all you really know about him, I think he has brown eyes, he cuts his own hair, and I think you can infer that he
doesn't wash very often sometimes. Although I still quite fancy him, not going to lie.
Well, I think he sort of implies whether he's quite physically fit and attractive because of the nature of the work he does and the fact that he does quite well with women.
Yes.
He's
got an allure.
He does, but then beyond that, I think it's good to let the reader kind of put their own sort of
I
facade
just
on
wondered if
that.
you had any, like, I suppose, I mean, for Campana, actually that really makes sense. How was that for you when that was the casting?
Yeah, like that was really great. I mean, because Eric Bana, I mean, he does a lot of American things, but he does. So sometimes people don't realise he's Australian, but he absolutely is. He's done loads of really great Australian work, and he's such a kind of beloved national treasure for us. That's I think in terms of someone who the audiences can absolutely get behind and they really want to follow through the story, and just has that kind of real natural goodwill about him. He's pretty easy on the eye as well, which helps.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, I'm really delighted that he's doing it.
Was it a pinch yourself moment when you found out it was going to be? I mean, can you believe all of this has happened, really? Because it has been an incredible success, all 3 books.
Yeah, it is like I have to say, like I feel like a lot of pinch myself moments. I mean, because I realised the other day it was sort of 3 years since The Dry came out in Australia, and I mean, it feels like in some ways it feels like no time at all, and some ways it feels like a lifetime because so much has happened, and it's been like it's such a cliche. I'm trying to think of a better way to say it, but it has been such an absolute dream because I had wanted to write a book for so long, and I just literally wanted to write a book. And then for it to get published was amazing, and then for it to get kind of, I don't know, being embraced by booksellers and librarians and readers and things has been so, like such a lovely kind of experience to kind of be able to, I guess, like have people enjoy the same things you enjoy,
Yeah, and also one thing that I think I'm really grateful for as well is that I love Australian fiction, and Australian fiction doesn't get outside of Australia that often, but I think this has definitely paved a way for more Australian set books, more Australian, all those things to kind of come out. So I think that's really brilliant.
Yeah, I hope so. I mean, it is like a really like a fun, dynamic, interesting, intriguing country with like a really, it's a really very unique culture and things. So I think hopefully, the more people, embrace it and love stories that come out of there, the better.
Yeah, I will always keep promoting Australian fiction on this channel, I promise. There's people who've known I've watched for a long time. Well, thank you so much, Jane, for coming onto the channel and joining me today.
Oh, thank you for having me.
And if you haven't read them, you need to read them. I've been banging on about them enough. But I will see you all in another video very soon. It's goodbye from me.
And goodbye from me.
Bye.